So we are back to an all too familiar situation. The new normal, and a frustrating one indeed, in as far as the tenure of the electoral commissions in this country are concerned. The short-lived tenure that ends in disgrace for the commissioners. And as I have pointed out, it's not a new experience. After the 2007-2008 controversial election, the 10th Parliament did away with the late Kivuitu-led Electoral Commission of Kenya. Then came the Interim Independent Electoral Commission that oversaw the constitutional referendum in 2010. Then accolades were poured on the new team after a successful poll. But after the 2013 election, whose results then court leader Raila Odinga disputed, a spirited mass action campaign finally removed Chair Isaac Hassan and his team, one of them a former commissioner who's here with us, and other 8 commissioners. They removed them in late 2016. Part of the team was also plagued by corruption allegations emanating from procurement scandals. Now, a 14-member joint parliamentary team then triggered the entry of Wafula Chebukati and as chair and 6 other commissioners. That was in 2017. But divisions in the team soon played out publicly. And the new commission was accused of bungling the 2017 August 8th presidential election, whose results were subsequently annulled, and another election held on October 26th, whose results were upheld by the Supreme Court. Now, a campaign for the removal of the Secretariat was also initiated, specifically the CEO Chiloba. Ultimately, one commissioner, Roslyn Akombe, quit and discredited the commission. Chiloba, the CEO, was, as we saw here last week, then sent on compulsory leave with corruption allegations in the procurement of electoral technology also plaguing this commission, just like the one before them. Yesterday, 3 other commissioners resigned, saying the chair is incompetent. The chair, meanwhile, is staying put despite calls for his resignation. So we are asking you tonight, what will it take to get an enduring and effective electoral commission in Kenya? Keep talking to us. The hashtag is the big question on Twitter. Text us on 22422. In studio now, on my immediate left is Mule Musau, the National Coordinator, Election Observation Group, and former Commissioner of the IEBC, among those that were handed out in office in 2016, Thomas Letangule, also a lawyer. Thank you both for making time for us this evening. My first question is what has happened just before we went on air, when we saw a statement from Chebukati saying Chebukati and the other 2 commissioners that are left there, their security has been withdrawn. I don't know what you make from that. I'll start with you.
About the withdrawal of security,
yes.
I don't know what exactly happened there, because technically...
What do you make from it? Because people are already telling them to quit. Now we are seeing the security being withdrawn.
Could be just another form of pressure, because technically Chebukati and the 2 commissioners are still in office. They haven't yet tendered their resignation, so they are entitled to all their usual perks.
Yeah.
But the withdrawal of security could just be another form of pressurizing them to see what's happening.
All right.
Yeah.
Mule?
Well, from where I sit, I see 2 things. First, I see what Commissioner is talking about in terms of we have a commissioners are still in place. They have not resigned. They enjoy tenure of office, and they therefore should be accorded the privileges which comes with that particular office. That is part of respecting the institution. But on the other side, we're also seeing the political pressure which has been, of course, being put on the IEBC in terms of the commission, in terms of them resigning. So I see a political hand in that, somebody is telling them, you know, you need to get out.
And we'll look at shortly what Duale and Orengo says about the political class about this. But when you talk about political pressure, you're at liberty to answer this or not. But because this is security, which can only be withdrawn by the government, you would definitely think this pressure is coming from government.
Well, that's very obvious.
All right, let's take a listen now to what the political class have been saying about the recent happenings at the IBC.
Has no legal basis to call a commission meeting. So he's just sitting now in the office. He can't give directions. The law is very, very clear on the issue of the quorum. He can't have a plenary because the quorum is lacking. So Wafula Chebukati and his 3 colleagues, his 2 colleagues, cannot function. So, and the Constitution does not anticipate that kind of a scenario. The Constitution anticipates where there is a quorum.
What Senator James Orengo said yesterday about it, generally just saying the happenings at the IBC are what they were talking about last year, saying they were being used by the state to rig the election, and that the team should now quit altogether. Says they are no longer good or bad commissioners in IBC. The organization is cursed. The resignations are a symptom of an incurable and cancerous disease that bedevils the commission. So calls now on Chebukati to resign as well. That is after the 3 commissioners quit and they said he's very incompetent. He says he's staying put, and in fact, he said the relevant organs should ensure continuity in the commission. So from where you stand, your experience being a commissioner, of course, your experience in the elections, should Chebukati and the other 2 commissioners stay, or should they leave with what has been happening?
I think Hussein, what has happened has already created serious damage to the existence of that commission, unfortunately, so to speak, because already half the commissioners are out. That leaves chairman and 2 commissioners. Chairman and 2 commissioners. The 3 of them don't have the quorum to do any business in the commission.
Right.
So technically the commission is paralyzed. They cannot make a decision. They cannot pass any resolution. And therefore, even if they continue staying, it will not help the commission and the continuity of its work. So I think in the circumstances, something must be done to bring the commission back to functioning. And so therefore, I concur with the leader of majority as he says that this commission now cannot make any decision and cannot function as sure.
But he was adamant, you can see Chebukati in his statement, we are requesting the relevant government, I mean it's a longer statement, but we're requesting the government organs to act appropriately and ensure that the commission's operations are not stifled. In other words, he wants continuity. That's
yes, I know.
But the issue, first is very unfortunate, and I'll use Letangule's words, it's very unfortunate that we are discussing the issue of disbanding the commission, or of coming up with a new commission very early in the tenure of that commission.
Right.
Over the last 1.5 years, we've changed the commission. We are doing another one which is against best practices in terms of management of elections across the world. But that said and done, I think the options which are left out there, when Chebukati talks about continuity, I think one of the issues which is coming up is that it is expected, it is anticipated that there's supposed to be a way, a method in which you are supposed to be able to replace the commissioners. From the provisions of the law, one of the things, and it can be corrected by the lawyer here, I mean, after Akombe resigned last year, the expectation was that vacancy was supposed to be announced by the president. That has not happened. We have these 3 commissioners who resigned yesterday. They're supposed to write a letter to the president, and within 7 days the president is supposed to also announce through a notice and declare that there are vacancies. Now what happens after that is where there's a lacuna. We are supposed to have a panel that is supposed a selection panel. That is not in place, because that is supposed to be appointed, or at least the composition of it is supposed to be decided by parliament. Now these parliamentarians, and you can hear the majority, are the same ones who are saying, you know, your days are numbered, you need to get out of office. So I think the die is cast as far as the Chebukati Commission is concerned, but it's a really unfortunate situation as far as the Kenyan electoral process is concerned.
But it also seems we could be headed for a long-drawn problem. We remember the Joint Select Committee that made the amendments, did an amendment for only that specific time.
Yes.
So it didn't foresee that these problems could happen again. So meaning it would be, I mean, it could be this problem for a longer period.
Sometimes when you say did not foresee, I always think there's always mischief in
so
hidden
it was
somewhere.
Foreseen, but it was
I think some of these are very deliberate steps which are taken by politicians in terms of knowing that it's going to come back to them again, and perhaps it's something they can be able to use appropriately at the time of need, and I think that is what we are looking at the moment, because you cannot be able to say that. I mean, very clearly the provisions are such. The first appointment of this commission, there is a clear procedure. Why wouldn't the drafters have gone forward to talk about what happens in the subsequent? Because a resignation is something that can be envisioned.
Exactly. I mean, you are among those that were removed in 2016 to bring this new commission that is now having a lot of problems again. So from where you stand, should, even for you, Mule, should this commission now be disbanded? Should all commissioners be removed? Is that what will ensure we have a better commission in future? Or should we first investigate what is the problem within IEBC and handle the problems within IEBC?
From my understanding is that the commission that I was in and which we came out to pave way for this one, the problems which we faced for our removal were more external and politically motivated. Remember, we did an election, and as always, the 5 elections were not contested except the presidential election, which were done in the same day and the same time.
So was last time.
So were the last time.
Yeah.
But then, if you look at that team, they were removed out of office by external forces, the political forces, and a compromise which was then reached, and a negotiated settlement, and a dignified exit. I must add that we left with a dignified exit.
With money.
Yes, not necessarily money, but with a serious report that said these guys are not culpable of anything. And
that was the agreement.
And that's the agreement, and that's why it exists. But if you look at the current situation, they are the architects of their own problem. Unfortunately, again, what has happened, in fact, they have made history, being the first election in Africa to be annulled by the Supreme Court, and being the 4th in the whole world to be annulled by any court. And so they have made history by, having that election being annulled. At least the other chairman and the other commissions, none of their elections was annulled at all.
But there are somewhat similar problems, divisions within the between the Secretariat and the Commission, issues of procurement scandals within the Secretariat, again touching on commissioners and bringing up those divisions. And again, we also saw external interference even this time. In fact, it's what instigated all this up to where we are right now, then divisions within the Commission.
Looking at it, Hussein, so that I can give my colleague to look at it also, it looks like there is, from the word go, there has been a problem of leadership within the Commission.
That Commission?
Yes. Where?
With this, you're talking about the chair.
Exactly. Where do you see, this is one commission. The Secretariat and the Commission are one. It's only that the roles are a bit defined. But then where do you see a chairman writing a memo to his CEO who is next door? I mean, this is something you could have just called and discussed and agree mutually. Where do you see people openly displaying division rather than sitting down as one commission, and this is where we had strength at least, and decide and say what is the problem and talk to each other, sometimes even retreat and decide the best way forward. So I think the problem of leadership then has continuously led up to where now the position where the rest have
before Mule weighs in, the issue of the Secretariat, and we have seen the push and pull. Have we created 2 centers of power within the IEBC? Is it such a big problem?
From the outside,
because they don't seem to, they cannot handle. I mean, that problem has not been solved for the last 1 year.
Remember, Hussein, we have only one act, and which is managing this commission, and that's the IEBC Act. The IEBC Act spells, just like all other commissions, the role of the commissioners and the role of the Secretariat, led by the CEO. There should actually be harmony between the two.
What if there isn't, because right now there's no harmony?
Well, and that boils down to leadership styles. Remember, every person comes with their own leadership style. And this is where I'm saying, even as we look forward to recruiting the new commission, because I think in the current situation,
that is the only way.
These guys cannot survive. Then we must look at the people that are coming to the commission. We must look at past records. We must look at performance. Even in every other country, people who are brought to crucial commissions are people who have been seeing their work to perform elsewhere. So that, because there is no training for an electoral commissioner. You're brought in from your diverse function and you're told, here, manage elections. And therefore, you come in without any external experience at all.
Okay. Mule?
Yeah. Well, first, let me just a quick comment on the roles of the Commission and the Secretariat. I think the roles are very clear. Policy and strategy and oversight. And then there is on the Commission, on the Secretariat, we are having implementation of those policies and strategies. And so, and therefore, those roles are very clear, and I think that's how corporate governance is conducted everywhere. I think where perhaps there's a friction is the question is where we talk about a full-time commission which is oversighting. And now that oversighting question, he's talked about the issue of leadership. How do they go about it, and what are they oversighting on? But the broad story for me is two major problems and then an opportunity that I see. One is that we have allowed our political class to be the managers of
to interfere in the process,
our election process. Remember, we are dealing with an independent commission. It's an independent office. It's an independent entity. When politicians like the majority leader, we have Senator Murkomen giving notices to this commission, what is that? You're giving notices to an independent commission. Forget about Chebukati, forget about who are the commissioners, forget about what happened in the 2017 election. It is an independent commission. You're giving directions to it. You're giving them ultimatums. You're withdrawing their security. What does that speak in terms? That is political interference. That is making that commission not independent. So it does not matter. Even as we move to the next step, we must ask ourselves about the kind of structure that we want in terms of the commission. The second issue is that we, as I said when I started, we elected to have a new commission very close to the elections. Most of the other issues that you're talking about in terms of procurement, in terms of operations, were being done within a very short period, protracted period. So a number of mistakes could even have happened by design and by default. And lastly, for me, there's a question of opportunity. And the opportunity for me is that all these issues which are coming up, because we have, as election observers, when we launched our report just about last month, we talked about quite a number of issues which we think need to be addressed in terms of electoral reforms, and the politicians are talking about electoral justice as well. So out of these issues, we have seen a number of processes where we had problems, the political party primaries, we had the voter register itself, it needs to be looked into, with the voter education process, and the management itself of the election. So from where we sit, we are saying perhaps this is a very good opportunity happening this early in the new electoral cycle to be able to review, have an independent review of this entire process with a view, first because it's already 10 years from the other independent review that we had with Kriegler. Can we look into the systems again? Can we look into the processes again, the management of it, as we move forward?
But how? What are the suggestions finally as we wind up? But just before that, I want Thomas Letangule, you don't have to name names, but from all sides of the political divide that participated in the election when you were there, is there anything like independence in the commission?
Yeah, I think it is there.
Without any interference?
Mostly, I have been there, I would say, in 6 years. And mostly, although they appear to be, there is no overt interference in the commission directly, as like telling the commissioners, do A, B, C, D, from the political class, even from the ruling people. So there's indirect? I think that indirect interference could be there, where probably pressure in political rallies... Which makes the commissioners unsettled? Exactly. So you've experienced that yourself? And which brings a lot of pressure. And which even, that's why you saw the other three the other day just resigning, because of that kind of pressure. But then, again, when you go into this job, you must go with a mind knowing this is a very hot seat. And therefore, you must have the strength to handle that kind of pressures. All right, very briefly, as you give us your final suggestion on what we should go for going forward, I'll read some tweets here. We have somebody here who says, sorry I didn't get your name, but he says the IPPG is the only solution to the problem or crisis IEBC is faced with. It worked in 2002 election. Chebukati has failed us. I don't know if we had a very stiff political competition in 2002. Sorry, that's what he says, 2002. Somebody else says Ojore, 1991. Unending politics experience in our country is the stumbling block in having a genuine, honest, and most polished electoral system in Kenya. Unless politicians change, we'll still live with this mess, is what you're talking about, Mule. Migwa Stephen, this is my take. I have only two proposals. One, nominate commissioners from each and every political party, but not this the IPPG system. He says only major political parties. Proposal number two, presidential and gubernatorial elections should be held on the same day separately from other elections. He says, I rest my case. Onura Meshak says, the IPPG is the only solution. Okay, he also talks about that. And Nico Nyango says, all the commissioners, look at this, all the commissioners of the IEBC should be clergymen. That is bishops. This is how people are frustrated. That is bishops who are free from malpractices like corruption. The CEO should also be a clergy equal to the late Cornelius Korir.
And then we have Abdallah Mdambo. I think the only solution to avoid all this is to call electoral commissioners from another country for presidential elections. I don't know what you think and what you suggest going forward here.
I partly agree with some of their suggestions, but I mostly also disagree. Like, for example, we can't have commissioners from another country. I mean, it's like all Kenyans have failed. I think the way forward, I know that the IPPG in 2002 worked. But then, if you look at our structure, if we have commissioners appointed by political parties, now you will have a total war in the commission. Because this particular one commissioner will be representing a political party A, another one will be representing a political party B.
Doesn't that happen now indirectly? Does that happen?
At least it's hidden, if it is there at all. So there will be a total war, and now there will be, you know, open, because I know I'm representing a political party, and my colleague knows is representing a political party. So we shall be like fighting like another parliament.
Some actually argue that it's better that it's in the open
I am
being
still
hidden.
saying for the idea that we stick with the recommendations of Kriegler, that the selection panel, and this is where you ask me way forward, this time round, the selection panel must be composed of professionals, must be composed of people who know the work that they are coming to do. So that as looking at the candidates who are coming in for chairman or for commissioners, they can quickly identify the strengths and eliminate weaknesses. And they will not be under pressure from political parties to pick a specific candidate. That way, we'll have probably a team which is really non-political, apolitical, and a team which will stand for Kenyans. That's what Kenyans are looking for. Okay. A team which will try, at least from the perception of people, to be neutral.
Mule.
First is a crisis that we already have currently, and that needs to be solved. Whether it is by the quick appointment and they have quick, as Chebukati says, quick act by the organs which are responsible for ensuring there is a framework for appointment of new commissioners, that needs to be worked at. If they are going to stifle the process so that Chebukati resigns, then that process needs to be expedited, so that because we are not going to keep the commission at limbo. Remember, there are activities which are ongoing. We have by-elections, we have
census coming.
So the faster we solve the problem of the commission and the secretariat, the better. And as Letangule says, again, as you come up with a framework for the recruitment, and that is where the onus is going to be on the major stakeholders to get out there and ensure that the process is going to be of integrity. Get the right panel that can be able to choose the leadership of the commission. And once that has happened, we must give this commission, whichever commission which comes in, whether it is replacement of the commission which is there, they must be given time. We must give them the independence. And Kenyans must start respecting the law in terms of the setup of the structures that we have put in place in terms of managing elections. Right. As I said, my final point is that I am happy this is happening now, personally, because it happens at the start of an election cycle. It would be bad if it was happening in 2021. Because now we're getting ourselves into another mess. Right. So let us think through this properly. Let us take on board all the proposals which are being given by different stakeholders in terms of improving the electoral process.
But, and I agree with him also, it has happened at an early stage of the election cycle. But then, because this is a very important commission, the Constitution anticipates anything. And therefore, and this is the commission which must fix it. Now, as it is now, they can make a resolution of any by-election which will come in. Yep. So the faster the political class, because they have, they are the ones who will do this, the faster they work on this problem, the faster they solve the issue, the better for the country.
All right. That is Thomas Etangulia, former commissioner with the IEBC, also a lawyer, and Mule Musao is the National Coordinator, Election Observation Group. Very interesting opinions you had on that. We thank you so much for making time for the big question tonight. Keep talking to us. We are asking you, what will it take to get an enduring and effective electoral commission in this country? Text us 22422. On Twitter is the hashtag The Big Question. We'll look at your feedback later on. Right now, take a short break. Sports News is up next.